Here we go, we're live. So when you're on, if you can send us a message or something just to let us know that you're here, that'd be great, so that we know that you can hear us and see us okay. Keep an eye and make sure that we can see when people are jumping on. So if you are new here, then welcome. Thanks for tuning in with us. My name is Lindsay, and this is my husband, Jess. And we are based in London, Ontario. We have training and lesson barn here. I do most of the teaching, Jess does most of the training. We show mostly reiners. We have some cow horses and some ranch riding horses and a little bit of everything, but the main focus is reining. And we are on here every Tuesday at 7:30, and we're answering questions from you guys, questions that are sent in. And the idea is to connect and maybe help you out and give you some kind of tips or a little boost in whatever you're working on or struggling with. And also just to provide something to do during lockdown, because in Ontario we are in our third, what are we calling this? Third lockdown? Third lockdown, and there's not much of an end in sight at this point. So we just wanted to get on and connect, I guess, with you guys, see how you're doing, give you some of the sights and sounds of the barn, like the birds that we've got in the background again. So yeah, if you're jumping on with us, then say hi, tell us where you're from, or an emoji. Hi, I see Christine and Nikolai, and I saw Rose back there, and Rob. That's great. It's nice to see your profile pics jumping up there. So the question for tonight is, what makes a good foot for a performance horse? And what are good angles for sliding plates? So this is something we get asked a lot, and somebody sent this one in. It was a while ago now, a few weeks ago now, and I think a lot of people probably have questions about feet that they're too shy to ask about. So if you are one of those people and you think, I have a question, but it's dumb and I'm embarrassed to ask it, don't be embarrassed. Ask it. This is your chance. There's no judgment here. Go ahead and ask those questions, and we will try to make sure that those get answered today, or if I don't happen to catch it in the comments, then we'll try to get those answered afterwards. You have something else you want to say? No?
One thing I do, but I didn't realize I was.
No, I just.
One thing I'd like, when people put the comment or sign in and stuff, we have a joke around here when somebody calls us. I always ask Lindsay, where are they from? And of course with Facebook, we don't know a lot of times. When you put your name in there, do me a favor, put where you're from, and also put what type of horse you ride. Does not have to be reiners. A lot of people that get on here definitely don't have reiners and cow horses. But do me a favor and do that. I like to see what kind of horses people have, and trail riding horses, pleasure horses, barrel horses. Yeah, just different things like that. I like to see that. If you wouldn't mind, where you're from and what kind of horses are
into. That's a good idea. You're getting used to these lives.
Oh, you betcha.
Okay, so settle in, because usually we're here about between half an hour and an hour. So get comfortable, and we'll jump into this, and you can ask questions at any time. I'll try to come back and answer some of the questions that are in the comments, and I have a couple questions that I've written down here that people asked earlier, so I will make sure we get to those. And before we start, I just want to say that I see a bunch of Momentum members in here jumping on, and that's great. If you are not in Momentum and you don't know anything about it, Momentum is our online coaching program where we are creating videos and riding plans, checklists. We go live in there as well, all kinds of things. And it's really building and becoming quite a great resource for people. And we are opening those doors up again May 16th. So if you're interested in that, you can send us a message in whatever way you prefer, Facebook message, email, text message, whatever. Or you can go ahead and sign up for the wait list and check out some of the information there at momentumhcph.com. So you can check that out if you haven't yet, and if that's something that interests you. And like I said, if you have any questions for either of us about that, go ahead and ask them. We're getting ready to open those doors up. Okay, so the question was, what makes a good foot for a performance horse? And Jesse is the star of tonight's live, so why don't you go ahead? Why don't you take it from here?
So since tonight is all about what I know about feet on horses, this will be done in about 4 minutes. It'll be the quickest one we ever saw. When I go to look at horses, whether it be to breed to a stud or pick a broodmare, buy a yearling, whatever, I do look at their feet. No foot, no horse, it's been said a million times over the years. What I'm looking for when I look at those horses is I want consistency from the right to the left. If one foot looks bigger than the other one, there's a problem. And it hasn't maybe popped up yet, but it's going to show us. If one has an excessively high angle than the other one, there's a problem. Anything where that sticks out to you. And I've said this to people buying horses for years. If something looks odd, it is. Trust your gut, something's wrong. Don't trust the guy selling you the horse saying it's not going to be that way. If this looks odd, it is. There's lots of things that can be, problematic with the feet. Whether we get into club feet, navicular, all that kind of stuff. Biggest ones I look at, because we like to buy yearlings, is the age we like to buy them at, and them younger horses, is I want to make sure there's a little bit of an angle from that cornet band down to the ground. I want a little bit of an angle out to the side, but I don't want it to be excessive, meaning like I don't want a big pie-footed horse. If somebody comes up to me and says, this horse is going to stay sound forever because look, he has these great big feet, they won't. If they're pie-footed, it puts more stress on the foot, it pushes it out further. That horse is going to have problems. I just want a little bit of an angle. If they're too straight up and down, we're likely going to end up dealing with some navicular later on. If they're too far out, we're going to have some separation and things if we ride them that hard. I just want them to look average. And I know that's not a real technical thing, but over the years, when you look at the horse, without knowing a whole lot about feet, you can usually tell if it doesn't look right, you're right. There's something wrong with it. I want them to land flat is a huge one for me. When I watch that horse walk down an alleyway, especially if I can get them on, flat cement, I'm really concerned that they land flat and they lift and travel flat. That gets a little higher than just the foot, but that's going to show up a lot. If I'm looking and it looks like one side is pushed out and that horse is kind of flaring out, that horse is going to have some structural problems and some shoeing problems as we get hard into training. In saying that, don't rule a horse out because of it, but acknowledge that there's a problem. When we go buy horses, I think a lot of people, the horse has this, I'm not going to touch him at all. Well, you have to have realistic expectations, but you know what you can live with. I'm a big one. I don't get along with, a horse that's a little clubby. And that's one that I stay away from real hard. I know other farriers are good at doing club feet, and I just don't like them. If it's an older show horse and it has a little navicular, I can work with that. We can keep, somebody into a show horse for cheaper and still have lots of success with it, so we're good. So all I'm looking for is an average. You're
saying that the birds are really loud.
Yeah. We're going to get rid of them one of these days.
Just try to talk really loud.
So as far as if I'm looking at that horse straight on, I want it to have that little bit of an angle coming down.
Do you want to show them our prop?
Oh, we have a wonderful prop. A friend of mine had this and he was going to throw it out and I thought, what a waste. So the angle I'm talking about, it's an old flask. It's a horse's foot made into a flask. Horse doesn't have much of an ankle, but it does well for explaining
kind of a
this.
swollen pastern and a bad shoe job.
So at this angle I'm looking for is just a little bit of angle here. This horse isn't too bad side to side, but he's a little dishy. Now, I just want a little bit of angle there. If it's too straight up and down, he's going to put too much stress on him when he hits the ground. And if he's too, what we call pie-footed, whereas when it comes out this way, like a drafty kind of horse, it's going to spread that horse's foot every time he hits the ground. The other angle that I'm more worried about than anything is when I look at the horse from the side, like this horse here, his angle is what we call a crushed heel, where it's underneath and it's pushing the lines of the foot are pushing up forward. Every time that horse hits the ground, it's actually going to push further up. I want a horse that stands a little straighter up and down. Maybe about that 54 angle is what we'll talk a lot about, but I don't get stuck on that angle. I'm very picky about what the horse looks like and how it's moving. I'm really worried if I need to bring that heel up, I want to do that right away when they're younger. And you can manipulate it a fair bit. A good farrier can bring that heel up quite a bit or drop it down if on the bad side of it. So if they have really long toes and they're dropped down in those heels, that stuff I'm a little cautious about. That's going to be really hard on a reiner, pleasure horse, cow horse, any of the disciplines where there's a lot of weight coming from up top. It's going to put a lot of stress on there. So I'm looking at those lines in that hoof. Are they going not perfectly straight up and down, but fairly close to it? And I want that horse to have that solid foot. Any type of flares, anything like that is going to show me that horse is going to struggle at one point. There's a structural problem in that foot that I want to stay away from. So to me, it's all about being straight. And anything that looks odd is definitely going to be odd. And it's going to cause some problems. If you have a decent farrier and you manage it, they're all fine. But I'm really looking to find that prospect or that horse for somebody that doesn't have those flares, that doesn't have that pie foot, and has a very consistent foot through all four. And that, I think, is an important one that people fail to look at. If there's a shoe size difference from right to left, something's going on that horse isn't growing properly, and it's something to be addressed as we get into there. The foot itself, when we look at them, let's say as a yearling or, I do it on the stud horses, like if we're out stud shopping or looking at mares. The other one I'm a big one on is, do they have good feet? If I walk into the barn and, there's old stud horse standing there and he doesn't have good feet, I'm likely not going to rush out to breed to that horse.
So I'm just going to interrupt you for a second. Most of the people that are writing in here are people that have reiners and people that have quarter horses. What would be a common thing that you would see in a quarter horse and a reiner that would turn you off? Like if you're looking at a stud or you're looking at something to buy. If I'm looking at a
stud, if I go in there and they have crushed heels, they have navicular, they have, my favorite, if I go to look at, let's say, a 15-year-old stud horse that's a breeding stud, and he's barefoot and walking around comfortably, to me, that's a big bonus.
I don't know what I just did. Got rid of all the comments.
Are we still on?
Yeah, we're still live,
okay.
But I swiped somehow. Oh, swipe. There we go. There we are. Okay, sorry.
So now you all got to see my lovely wife's finger going back
I know
and
my
forth.
finger and my squinty face up here. One day I will bring a second device down that I can read in my lap instead of doing this. But yeah, all reiners, it looks like trail riding, cow horse, extreme cowboy and cattle sorting. Okay.
So your cattle sorting horses are going to be the same as the reiners and the cow horse. A lot of pressure on their feet. They're going to torque off. They're going to have a lot of torque on them. So it's all going to be the same. Other things that I look for, because feet are very hereditary. If I have one that's really bad soled, meaning there's not a lot of cushion on the bottom of that feet and the horses are always needed to be padded, I'm going to worry about that when I go to breed them. it's not that you can't pad them, but I'm trying to get away from that. If I go to a stud barn and they have really fancy shoes on an old stud that's not riding anymore, I'm gonna wonder why. I'm gonna question it. So a lot of our horses here, to anybody who's not been at the farm, yes, we have a lot of birds flying around our barn, apparently. We have dirt floors. We have 3 different barns. They have to walk on some gravel. My outdoor pen is, covered in sand. My indoor pen's sand. 99% of the horses I ride, we can leave barefoot on the fronts, and then we shoe them on the back because we have the sliding plates on. I'm not worried if I have to shoe a horse. I'm not stubborn. I'm not going to sit there and make a horse suffer a little bit. If they need shoes, get them on there. I'm not a barefoot trimmer. I'm not going to sit there and praise that. If horses need shoes, they need shoes. We're asking them to do a very hard job. We're going to protect them. And a good shoe job doesn't hurt feet at all. It's going to help them. So if I'm looking at hereditary things, if they're very dry, if they're brittle, they got shallow soles, angles, all that comes into the hereditary part. So that's where we kind of bring in the breeding part as far as the feet go. Low heels and stuff like that can be managed. Soles can be managed, but I'm trying to find that horse that doesn't need as much management. I like to just trim them on the front and just have them sliders on the back. And then if we go to different show grounds, like if we're hauling a horse to a lot of shows, going for a title on them or something, I'll usually shoe them before. I'm not going to sit there and let them get a stone bruise because we're walking across the parking lot with gravel over top of cement. I'm going to shoe them. I've taken some years ago, even if we're going to a show that's, maybe 10 days long on cement, and I'll pad them up. A perfectly sound horse, I'll pad them up just to help them. But that's completely separate. That's managing your horse as you show it compared to what it needs as in the training and the everyday life. Those are external circumstances that we can control. When we shoe the reiners, the biggest thing for me is nothing is going to change as far as the angles, the way I shoe the horse from a regular foot that is a riding horse. Because there's a lot of loping before we get to the stop. So the old mentality used to be long toe, bring their heels down, and they would push out in front of them. And we've learned over time that that's not the best way to do it. We shoe a regular foot. We bring that toe back to a reasonable level, keep them heels up, same as you would just a regular riding horse. We kind of always talk around that 54-degree line, which is the degree from the coronet band to the toe, and then straight across the sole.
Can you show everybody what that angle is on our prop? Let's pull our prop back out.
So this horse here is going to be fairly low. The angle is from here to here, and it comes out to here. There's a straight line that comes out to here, and then straight across the sole this way. So we want them to be, if you kind of imagine, they'll be up kind of like that. They'll be up a fair bit more. A driving horse, they're going to, like a standardbred, they're going to have a little more down because the pull's coming from behind and they're trying to get them out in front. We're going to have them a little more stood up in front, straight up and down than most people think. The front feet on our reiners, we like to dub their toes off a fair bit. Bring that toe back so there's a lot of breakover, there's a lot of action in them knees. They can keep moving because our horses are going to push off on them bodies pretty hard, and we don't want them to jam their knees down. It gives them the ability to break over without having to push that extra little bit of toe. So I'll dub off a little bit on the toes. On the sliding plates on the back, I'm going to keep them as flat as can be on that coronet to toe angle. I'm going to fit a sliding plate just a little bit differently. We fit it what's called a little fuller, meaning when we put a front shoe on, there's just a little bit of a ledge. If you're looking at from the top, there's just a little bit of a ledge where you could, like the old saying is, you can kind of put a dime on it and just kind of move it around there. A lot of farriers, they'll shoe them what we call tight, where they bring it in just as tight as can be so that horse never gets into the mud, and it's a safe way to shoe them, but it's not a great way to shoe them. With the sliding plates, we actually put a little bit more of an edge on them. So if we imagine the foot, coming up to about there instead of all the way to that edge, the shoe will fit just a little fuller, almost a little bit bigger than we think the foot is. And it protects the foot. It's quite amazing if you see a video of a horse running down a track, or there's some things on the internet that are quite neat, how much the foot expands as it hits the ground. So when the sliding plates are on there and that horse puts all of his weight on his hip and pushes that into the ground, there's still support from that shoe to keep it from going over the side, going over the sides basically and pushing out. And when we shoe them a little bit fuller, we can protect the whole foot all the way back into the heels, which is so important. When we shoe them full, when you look at a sliding plate compared to a regular shoe, our nail holes are just a little bit further in, and that allows us to keep the shoe a little fuller than a regular horseshoe. And it just allows for a better set to that shoe. The biggest thing, and when farriers get together and talk about it, the opinions are, they're flat out outrageous. Everybody has the perfect way to shoe a horse. And it gets to be quite an argument because farriers are usually a bunch of opinionated.
So-and-sos.
Everybody has the right way to do it. For us, the biggest thing I find is I worked for a gentleman when I was a teenager who, even though he was likely one of the smartest people I've ever been around with horses, he would try anything. He would experiment, he would try, he would change, and he would listen to every farrier. And no matter if he agreed with them or not, and he'd tried it, and he'd tried a lot of things, boy, he would listen to find something new, because every time you think with shoeing, you know what you're doing, a horse will change their opinion, and it's hard to do. So when we shoe these horses and we keep it so full and that foot looks like the shoe is just a tad bit too big, that's what we want. And you want that in a back shoe. General rule of thumb, nothing will be different than a regular shoe other than we're a little fuller. And we put what we call a trailer on a horse. And what the trailer is, getting back to our faithful little flask here, is so this horse here doesn't have a trailer. He has run-down heels and he doesn't have a trailer. This comes straight up to the foot here. On a reining horse, we're going to leave this. I don't know if you can see that very well.
I'm going to hold it.
But this will cover up that bulb, the bulb of that foot. And it'll be in line to here. And the reason for that is as that horse pushes through the dirt and it pushes that dirt back, it can burn that bulb. That bulb is a very sensitive tissue on the back of that foot. And there's a lot of pressure going down and you're burning through the sand this way. So this protects that bulb. No sand can come up and the debris can't hit into that bulb and burn it. So we leave a little bit more of a trailer than most disciplines. You can argue, and all the farriers do, if you leave a little more trailer, it causes them to come underneath a little more. There's lots of arguments to that. And we've done it with pleasure horses too, to get them a little more underneath themselves in driving. But we're one of the few disciplines that will use a trailer for anything. Or to the degree that we do. So when we put these shoes on, we leave that trailer so that it doesn't burn. Everything is to protect the horse as he's coming through the dirt. We want to protect him from burning, and the sliding plate for anybody that doesn't know, and I apologize, when we put a sliding plate on, it's a flatter surface than a regular horseshoe, has a little more width to it, and it acts just a little bit like a ski. It keeps them on top and they push through. So our horses don't truly stop. If I, let's say, have a rope horse and I said, whoa, and got him up, I need that horse to stop dead. If I am on a reining horse and he stops and it takes him only 2 feet to stop, that's a pretty poor reining horse. We want him to go, a distance. If they're anything less than 15 feet, we're really not that impressed with them. So everything is to protect that horse. The idea of the steel on the dirt protects the walls, protects the foot, and because it gives a little bit, it protects their hocks, and the sliding plate is very big for keeping them sound because it allows that horse to push through the dirt without jarring their own body. It's similar, the difference of wearing a pair of skis and a pair of soccer cleats. If I want to slide, I need to be able to slide through there. So the gist of it is we put them on the same as a regular shoe, the same angles on them back feet, the same way we want them. We just leave a little trailer, and it's a fuller shoe. Now, within that shoe, there's lots of different sizes, lengths that we experiment with each horse. Years ago, the style of reining used to be, slide them for 30 feet. They stood up a little bit. We called it skating. They'd be a little more up, a little stiffer horse, and we wanted them to go long, and then horses would balance up through their head a little more.
I'm going to take that screen grab of you doing this for the thumbnail.
Yeah, I'm the same way.
This video.
Get a little growly in my face. A modern reining horse does not slide as long and as high. They get deeper. They use their back more. They get their hocks deeper onto the ground. We want them to go a little less length. Or I shouldn't say we want them to, but it's going to happen. But we want them committed into the ground. The dirt we show on is different now. We want a lot more, a little heavier dirt so they can hold them horses. 25, 30 years ago, it was all about you just kind of skim the top with the drags and you want them to slide forever, and it was all about who could slide the longest. And that's not the case anymore. So the older shoes had a thicker shoe. Like a regular shoe today is about a 1-inch shoe, sometimes even a 3/4 inch shoe, meaning this width here. And the old days, it was mostly common for us to show in something like this where it's 1 1/4 inch or even thicker, and you could build them to any size you wanted. Very seldom do we show in a shoe like that anymore unless we're going to a place that has kind of bad dirt, and for reiners that is horrible. We will leave shows if they're bad dirt, but if we need to, that's what we go to keep them on top. This is a pretty standard shoe, and there's nothing complicated about it. That's the biggest thing I think people don't realize is it's not outrageous, because we have to lope them a lot more than, we might be stopping for seconds compared to minutes of us loping to get there. So we need to keep them shod square so that they are proper.
Yeah. So they can get to the stop, so they can run to the stop.
Right, they have to get their sound. Mm-hmm. Another thing that the bigger shoes 25 years ago created was they slipped a lot more. They would slip at a lead. They just weren't as sound, so they were having troubles through their hocks, staying sound and into their stifles. They were having a lot more trouble, so they wouldn't stay into lead as well. And then you're popping out a lead, so what did you gain? The reining horses have evolved. They have figured out how to make a better, longer lasting, sounder horse, which is great for everybody, horses especially. And the shoeing has evolved quite a bit too. Common things we see with when horses come in that other farriers have done is they'll either put them just really tight, or they call up the farrier supply store and they order a set of sliding plates. Well, there's so many variables to that it's usually not going to help your horse very well. One thing we're big on is I'm very picky about where that horse lands. Is it straight? You know, when those trailers are down there, when that horse steps down, does he hit flat? And most problems are fixed just by going back to flat, straight, and keeping that horse simple. You know, I think that's one thing that's overlooked, is everybody tries to make it so fancy they get at a simple. Common things we do when we're putting on our shoes is because we're going to leave the heel out just a little bit more than a regular shoe and it's going longer, they have a chance of stepping on this branch here in this heel. So what we do is we leave it out there, but then, and I started to do on here, I don't know if you can see it or not, but it changes. I hit it with a grinder and I put an angle on it so that if one back shoe steps on another, they skim off. And in them sliding plates, that's so important, is because we're going to leave this so full, we got to protect that horse and make sure that they can't step on it and rip it off and then get into bad, pulling nails and stuff like that. Things that all the reiners are trying to change and help with their shoeing is they either want them to stop deeper, they want them to, common problems if the horses, especially young horses, they'll stop and they'll splay out. Let's say their hocks are in just a little bit, which most horses need to be. Them horses will stop and they'll splay out and they'll spread as they go through that stop. And from the trainer mentality, I don't want to fix that yet. I want to allow that horse to learn how to use his body better into that 2 and beginning of that 3-year-old year. Not where I'm going to hurt them. I don't want them to run them hard enough where I'm going to hurt them at that, but I want to let them feel, hey, if you splay out, that's going to be a little uncomfortable. Why don't you learn to put your feet in here? Then, as it's getting closer to shows and it's getting where I'm running that horse a little harder and I'm running him a little faster, I can play with the branches a little bit, maybe pull one in a little more, one just maybe a little longer than the other. There's many things we can do that create a little more drag on that inside and keep them from splaying out. There's a lot we can play with.
You mean if you need to, if it's not corrected with training?
Right. Especially, there was a few genetic lines that were great stoppers, but they were so strong it never hurt them to splay out. And you could help them a little bit, but over time, simple was best, and bringing them back to that basic straight shoe, flat shoe, always worked the best. And I think that goes with every discipline. Keep them simple. They will figure it out. They'll put their feet down where they belong. You got any questions?
No, that was a lot. That was a lot of info for everybody to digest.
I don't think it's a lot of info. It's a lot of keep it simple. That's so important, is just keep it simple.
Yeah, but there's stuff in there that you just said that I don't think about hardly ever.
That's why you married a farrier.
Yeah, kind of handy. Sometimes it's handy.
I guess one thing we can talk about, so the difference when we shoe a cow horse to a reiner, the cow horses, I'll usually go in with like a 3/4 inch shoe because we don't want them to slide near as much as a reiner because they have to get back on their hocks and come back after a cow. So this is a shoe, so like if there's our 1-incher, there's what we put on our 2-year-olds and our cow horses. They're just a little 3/4 inch plate, exactly the same idea, same principles, just a little less steel. Anybody who's doing like the team penning or the rope horses, even just general riding horses, I like to put a flat, if somebody wants me to shoe the backs, I always like to put a flat 3/4 inch shoe on them. Because even as they're running around, them horses will stop a little bit and give them the benefit of that little bit of slide. There's no discipline, there's no horse that's going to jar perfectly dead still, because that would hurt them. You watch a barrel horse come into the barrel, there's a little bit of give as he comes into that dirt. Rope horses, there's a little bit of give. They want them to stop hard, but there has to be a little give. They're hitting dirt. And then every horse goes from there. Even just a general riding horse, I'll put like a 3/4 inch flat plate on, and then I can play around with the shoe from there. I always kind of start at that same general thing. Is that good enough?
That's good. That's really good. Okay, so there's a few questions that we need to answer. The first one was from Emily, and it was about navicular. And Emily, your question was navicular, supplements, exercise, or treatment, question mark.
Yes.
Yes, yes, yes.
One thing with navicular, and I've said that before and I'll say it again, I do not mind, if I'm going to buy a horse, I will not turn one down that's navicular. I don't go looking for it. I don't want to breed it, but it can be managed, and if you have a navicular horse, you can buy them I am Dutch. And you can buy them pennies on the dollar and show them.
Yeah, that's what we did with my first
when
reiner.
Lindsay wanted to start showing a reiner, we couldn't afford him, an expensive horse.
No.
When we laugh about it all the time, I bought it off of a very good friend of mine, and the deal was guaranteed unsound.
Guaranteed 75% sound. Yeah.
Was there 75%?
I think that's what he said, and we were like, which leg?
She had navicular. We knew that when we bought her. Mm-hmm. We sold her after we showed her, or Lindsay showed her.
She still had navicular.
Still had navicular. It was still sold as guaranteed unsound.
Yeah.
Nobody ever paid very much money for that mare, and she kept going for a long, long time. She's quite an old mare now.
Yeah.
You can't turn one down.
She's 21 or 22 this year.
Is she? Mm-hmm. And again, I don't go looking for them, but they can be managed. Biggest thing with managing them is keep them shod regularly and give them all the toe breakover you can possibly give them. If you use a bar shoe, that's fine. And the other thing with navicular horses is you got to experiment. Some horses do really well if you take a regular horseshoe and just flip it around, do a 180 so that the heel opening is actually at the toe. Gives you a bar with complete breakover at the front. Others like a little bit of an angle change where you put like a 2 degree and lift them up. And then other ones like pads. And if you look at the x-rays and they say navicular, it doesn't mean they all get shod the same way. You have to experiment with the different types of shoeing a navicular horse. And
all the therapies.
Yeah, and it's frustrating. Lots of ice, ice if you work them hard, and keep them off cement. You can
Rub
buy
them down,
gel
their muscles
boots
get
now.
sore. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's I think another big thing, especially when you go to show, is because their feet are going to be a little bit sore. Their muscles are going to be more tense. You're going to have to take them for walks a little more every day. First thing in the morning, take them for a 5-minute walk, and it can be it can be managed.
Yep.
And definitely don't, just discard one for being navicular, but knowing that there's more maintenance involved too.
So let's
supplements.
Save some of this info, because Emily, you're actually you've got some really good resources inside of Momentum for this, where we did a whole live on this. We didn't do a whole live on navicular, but we did a live that included a bunch of stuff with navicular, and I recorded all of that and put it into a document inside of Momentum. So I will make sure that you get access to that you can find it inside of there, because we talked about what supplements. I think we linked the supplements, we linked all of the alternative treatments and stuff too. So I'll make sure that you get that. Emily, let's see if we can get some of these other questions, because there's quite a few in here. Nikolai wants to know, what is your live stream schedule for the future? We're on every Tuesday night at 7:30, Nikolai. And we would love it if you could join
Is this
us.
live streaming or face? Never mind. I'm not asking.
Okay, I'm just gonna go to the next question about shoes. Billy Joe, is there a question between horses with white hooves and black hooves? Is it true that white hooves are weak?
Is there a difference? Yeah, one's white, one's black.
Don't be a smart.
Yes, but not to the point that everybody thinks. Like, there's some old timers that say they'd never have a white-footed horse. You know, a lot of it depends on what type of environment you're riding them on.
Nutrition and, yeah.
You know, if you're riding up in the desert, you know, maybe white feet ain't the best things. It's going to be hard on them. Black feet have their downsides too. If you're in a real dry, you know, dry barn where you're always working on them that way, they can get a little brittle quicker. There's not as much as the old timers kind of think about it. One of my favorite stories to that is a gentleman that my father worked for many, many years ago. Was a standardbred guy, and they hate white feet. And he had a sorrel mare with big white stockings out in front of his house, and she stayed there their whole life. And he said she owned the farm because she won that much money racing that she bought his farm. And, you know, white-footed standardbred, I mean, everybody thought that was horrible. But she survived for many years and won a lot of money. You know, they can be managed. They're fine. You know, some white feet can get more brittle, get kind of chalky, but you can manage that. You know, in today's day and age, we have the technology. We can do it. I don't look for white or dark feet when I go look at horses. Good feet is good feet.
It's just I find it harder to evaluate, like if I'm looking at 4 feet and one of them is white or 2 of them are white, I find it just harder to tell whether they're even if I'm looking at white versus
Yeah, it
black.
definitely is. And even when we're shoeing
Even
them,
the legs, if
it's
they have
harder
white.
when you're shoeing them when they're different feet.
Is it? Okay.
Well, they look different, right? It's the optics.
Yeah. All right. So I think we covered all these questions. It looks like somebody likes the birds.
Come take them, all of them.
Come on over. That feels like an essential service. Yeah, I think we got all these questions. And Bright, Ontario, I didn't see this one at the beginning. Breeding stock paint, pet for life. Lucky horse.
So I think one thing, getting back to the shoeing of the reining horses, whether it be navicular or the actual sliding plates, is looking at how that horse is built higher than just the pastern is so important.
Oh, there's another question there.
If we have a horse that is very straight up and down compared to some good angles up through their hip and all the way up through their back, you know, I'm going to shoe them a little bit differently. It's still very important that they go straight side to side, but if a horse is real but high, I might try their angles up. And it's so frustrating because not all horses react the same way. You know, if one you think, oh, I should bring them up, and they want to go down a little bit, it's such an experiment. You know, you have 2 that are built the same, and you got to change the angles. The same with navicular. You think this is the perfect angle on one horse, and then why isn't it on the other? And it's frustrating. But a good shoer, good trainer, horse owner, I guess everybody involved, can, let's say I put the angles up and I start to say, well, geez, you know what, his back's getting just a little bit sore. You know, maybe I need to drop him down a few degrees or whatever. It's so important to be flexible with them horses. My go-to is usually always up, which is quite opposite of what a lot of people want to do. They want to drop them heels down on the reiners and the cow horses to get them further down. And I have found over the years, more often than not, keeping them up on them heels, keeping them a little higher, has kept them way sounder for a longer period of time. And one thing I'm very big on around here is we do a lot of, or used to when we actually went to shows and we were allowed to go to public outings, is we did a lot of, weekend warrior type horses, haul them down the road, next show. And we'd show them a few times every weekend, and it's hard to keep those horses sound for a long period of time. And 9 times out of 10, bringing their heels up and bringing that angle up like that actually did better for them, and they stayed way better, way longer.
Okay, Mary has a question. She has a horse with a toe crack. What shoe would help with a horse that's hard on her feet?
There's not a specific toe. So if it's a toe crack, one thing you have to address a few things. Is it deep? Does it go into that inner wall? Is it just cosmetic on the out? My go-to on a lot of horses with a toe crack is I'll put side clips on a horse. They have some devices where you can actually squeeze their toe in a little bit to keep it from cracking. The problem with a big toe crack, if that's what you're referring to, where it's a problem where you're concerned about it, is that every time that horse hits the ground, his foot expands. So you're constantly working and expanding that crack. By putting side clips on a horse, you don't allow that front quarter of that foot to expand near as much. So that horse can grow from the top down where it's not being split every time he hits the ground. Some horses, you got to take a Dremel tool and take that whole crack out so it can just be healed without it pushing across all the time. There's a lot of variables to that. I mean, without seeing your horse and how that crack is actually going. Some of that gets back to that whole genetic thing, and that's a tough one. If I'm going to oil a horse, like after I've put them them side clips on and I've done whatever, one thing I think to emphasize with sliding plates, any kind of shoes and everything, oil the coronet band. Don't touch the nails. Don't go down into that, where all them holes are for the nails and all that stuff.
Next question is from Crystal. Since Thrushbuster is taken off the shelves, what do you recommend?
For thrush, there's a couple of good products. We use one, there's a white lightning gel that works really good for a lot of horses. It is available in Canada now. Thrushbuster was a really good product. You can still get it in the States. I forget which chemical in it they don't like in Canada. But I found that the Grand Circuit makes it. White Lightning is a really good product, and now it comes in a gel, which is so much easier to use. It's a little expensive when you go to buy a little bottle. It's $35, $40 for a little bottle, but you just dab a little bit on. Where Thrushbuster was a little more liquidy, and it kind of went everywhere. I know it's not the best thing to say is I still pick up a little Thrushbuster every once in a while when I'm in the States, and I still use it. It was a good product, but my go-to now is the Grand Circuit White Lightning gel.
Brittany is asking, hoof conditioners, oils, dressings, etc. What, when, and why to use them?
99% of them don't use them. 99% of them, they're just waste of money, and they don't do anything for your horse's feet other than your farrier goes to pick it up and they are greasy and ugly. The biggest thing when you're putting any of that stuff on, keep it up on the cornet band. Down in the nail holes doesn't do anything. The horse grows from the top down, and when you get them into them nail holes, it actually kind of rubs them loose a little bit, and it kind of gets in there where it's not supposed to be. The good ones and the bad ones.
So when? She said when first. I think she said when first.
It doesn't hurt, a couple times a week.
When it's dry is when we usually do it.
Yeah, when it's dry or when you know it's about, if it's gonna get dry later on,
Yeah.
And keep an eye on your feet. If your farrier's saying that this horse's foot is a little chalky and a little soft, I mean, I've seen people, well, I'm gonna put more oil on it. It doesn't make it harder. It doesn't help it. So you have to address what type of foot you have, what you're riding in, and how to do it that way. If I put a hoof conditioner on a horse's foot, the creams usually don't do that much. I've never really had, maybe there is some good stuff out there. I guess I've never investigated it that much. Never had great luck with a lot of the creams. They're hard to put on and it just doesn't work. Thick oil sure works well. You want something that stays on there a little bit. And just do it around that cornet band. The one thing that does do really well though is when to put it on, not seasonal, but think about it when you ride. When you're done riding your horse and you go to put him away, put it on and leave him in the cross ties. Don't put him back in the stall where he's going to walk through the shavings and that's going to take it all off. Leave him in the cross ties for 20 minutes with it on. Anytime you can have him where he's not running around, I've seen people put it on and then turn him out in long grass. Well, it doesn't stay on. And it's stuff, you don't really think about, but you got to have it stay there. You got to have it work. So you want to put it on the cross ties and leave them there. When we ride horses, when we're done, if we bath them off or whatever, we leave them in the cross ties. We'll ride other horses and let them dry off there. And that's when you want to do it. When you pull them out of the stall to go ride, as soon as you get them in the cross ties, put a little on there. Let it sit on there as much as you can before you put them in the sand, before you put them in the shavings. Try to help them with that.
Hi guys, I think you're essential. I miss coming out soon. Yep, hopefully
So would a bird
soon.
exterminator be essential
yeah.
if anybody knows one?
Yeah.
They go in stages, quiet and then not.
Yeah. Okay, I think we have covered all of the questions. If we've missed your question, I'll make sure that I get to it after we close this thing down. Sometimes, for some reason, Facebook doesn't show us all the comments. And do you have anything else you want to add to that?
We can go into lots more. How long do you want to do?
No, I think I'm good. I think I'm good.
There's a lot of opinions when it comes to shoeing reiners.
Yeah.
Or shoeing any kind of horses.
Yeah.
Best way to have a fight at a horse show is get 4 farriers and ask them a question on what they think.
Okay. So we're going to shut it down for tonight. Thank you for watching. Thank you for coming every Tuesday. I know some of you guys are on here every Tuesday night with us, and that's great. I know some of you guys are setting alarms and the whole bit. So thanks for being here. And Nikolai also misses coming out and hopes we can open up again soon. Yeah.
Miss you too.
We miss you too. Hopefully sooner rather than later. And hopefully we will catch you guys next week on Tuesday at 7:30. So same time, same place. That's another question all about you next week. You get to do all the talking again next week.
Oh boy.
Next week is all personal questions about Jessica Fowl.
Oh, that should be good.
No, it's all about
Okay, I'm going on vacation next Tuesday. I won't be here.
Where did you learn about training horses? That is the question. Tell us the story about how you learned to train horses.
I'll let you know when
don't
I've
start
learned.
talking now. We're
I
gonna
haven't even
save
learned
that.
about it yet. I'm still trying to learn every day.
That's what we're going to talk about next week. And we hope that you'll join us next week. Thanks for being here, you guys. We will talk to you soon.
Have a good night.